Hello, nurses, and welcome to the Healthy Nurse Connection. This is a podcast where we talk about all things nursing, whether you're a seasoned nurse, a new nurse, a nursing student, or even thinking about becoming a nurse. This is a podcast for you. We talk about nursing, the hardships, the wins, the goals, and how to live your best nursing life. I'm Leslie Catalano, your host, and this is the Healthy Nurse Connection. Hello, nurses. Thank you for joining me again at the Healthy Nurse Connection. I am Leslie Catalano, your host, and today we are talking with Valerie Probstfeld, who is also a nurse and a mom, and she has a podcast herself that she does on a regular basis, and so we are going to talk to her and find all about her. So, Valerie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you for having me on your show. It's an absolute pleasure.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to come. I'm glad we're able to connect. So just to start, I really just always ask our guests, like, especially if you're a nurse, like, what was the reason you became a nurse? What is your why for like joining the nursing field?
Yeah. And thank you for asking that. I think that's so great to reflect on. And to be honest, like thinking about it, I feel like I was called to be a nurse. If there was like one particular thing that, like when I was growing up, there were so many things that I wanted to be. Like I am a musician. I play the flute. So I studied for that for a while. I graduated with my bachelor's in nursing as well as music. So I kind of like added nursing on. But there was one particular moment I remember in nursing school. Actually, no, sorry, it wasn't at nursing school. It was my music school. So I was in piano class, and this was before I knew really anything about nursing, but there was a substitute instructor and she was a nurse, and she was telling us how she felt when she was in the OR and preparing patients for surgeries, and how it was just so interesting, and comparing it to performing on stage. And I don't know what it was about that moment, but it really just kind of lit something in me. And I'm like, I never thought about nursing. And I really like, these medical things. I've always been interested in it. So let me look into it. And I remember it was like a week or two later, we had some medical emergency in the music department, and I helped with that event. And I remember just feeling so alive, like I was able to help someone. And then later on in the day, I was sitting in like my recital class and being like just comparing the two. And I'm like, you know what? I really think this is what I'm called to do. And it was just an interesting moment where I think life sometimes will give you those little signs of what you're here on this earth to do. And so I'm so glad that the universe, God, or whatever that is, showed me that opportunity, and I kind of heeded the calling.
Yeah, I've asked several nurses now, like their why, and it always seems like it comes to this like inner calling to just, to be in that field. So I think that is really, really great. And I think that's something that we all feel at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about like what you have done in your nursing career and like what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I have done so many things. I think a lot of it's just me trying to find myself. And so I became a nurse in 2007, and actually knew I wanted to be a nurse practitioner. So I went kind of straight into nurse practitioner school. I went to Bradley University for my undergrad and applied to a bunch of NP schools. And I applied to Yale, and I was like, I didn't even know they had a nurse practitioner program, but that'd be kind of cool to go there. So I was accepted, and I'm like, well, I guess I have to go here because I'm like, I want to see what it's like. And so I enrolled in their FNP program, and it was just a great opportunity. Studied so much and tried to see, where do I fit in? Like I knew that I liked working with children, but I didn't really know much else. So an opportunity arose right after graduation to start in a pediatric neurology unit out in Texas. So I was like, I just moved to Connecticut a couple of years ago. I was in the Chicago area beforehand, but why don't I try Texas? It was kind of like I was in my 20s and just wanted to see, life is so many open doors. And so I moved to Austin, worked in pediatric neurology, and the teachers that I had, the neurologists, the nurse practitioners, the nurses, they were amazing. Like I did not know really much at all about, seizures. We maybe had one lecture or something on it, but I learned I'm so thankful for those colleagues that I had that taught me about it and that experience. So I worked in PD neuro for a good, I don't know how many years now, but it was a few years, and met my future husband, moved to Dallas because his job was out there, and continued to work in neurology and more education settings. And then essentially the state of Texas was saying, you have to get your acute care certification if you want to keep working. And I wasn't really interested in doing that. So I was like, well, let me try primary care, preventative care, really embrace my family nurse practitioner certification. So I did, retail health clinics and, did volunteer clinics, mostly with pediatrics, but I am so thankful for everything I learned along the way. And I also did a lot of teaching in adjunct teaching roles as well. So that's kind of been my journey. I've always had kind of a special interest in neurology, just from from the beginning when I started, but also I really love that education part and the preventative practice, trying to educate our patients on living a healthy lifestyle, and how do we get the change steps to work? I think the first step of change is sometimes the hardest, of being aware of change. And I think that, all these experiences over the past, I guess, more than a decade now has kind of shaped who I am today and what my passions are.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like you've moved around quite a bit too, which
yes.
I did early in my career also.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Yeah. I was a travel nurse for a short time, but it was, it was fun to do that.
I would have loved to do travel nursing. I would, if I could go back in time, and maybe someday I'll do that.
Yeah.
My kids are older.
Right. Yeah. Well, how many kids do you have and how old are they?
So I have 3 kids, 8, 5, and 3. So they are always keeping me busy, and it's a beautiful chaos, I like to say.
I'm actually almost in the same realm as you, because I have 3 boys, 9, 5, and 2.
Yep. They are. Oh, that sounds so much fun. Yeah. So much fun, but so busy at the same time.
Yes. Always busy, especially we're in sports, so that just goes all the time.
Yes.
So in your podcast, what I love about it is that not only do you're a nurse, but you're a mom first. And so your podcast really focuses on how to control, not just control your emotions, but where they might be coming from, and how to handle your stresses as a mom. So what even led you down the path of wanting to do a podcast around that?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. And I would say the biggest change in me was when I became a mom, and I went from trying to study motherhood like it was an examination of, I'm going to get this perfect A+ score in motherhood. I had growing up, I wanted to be a different mom. My parents did the best they could with the resources they had, but I always am I want to do things differently. And I feel like we all kind of struggle with that. Here's what I want to do. And here's what I don't want to do. But once my first was born, she was taken away within 10 minutes to the NICU. And I did not study for that. I was I don't know what to do now. This facade, this control that I thought I had, I don't have. And it was a very eye-opening experience and very transformative for me, because we didn't stay long in the NICU. It was only for a week or so, but I experienced healthcare from a different side. I experienced it from the patient side when I was always on the provider side. And I think I had this unique perspective of, okay, I'm, attending rounds and I see baby girl, labeled as baby girl, but she's my baby girl at the same time. And so how do I kind of balance this? And I say sometimes on my podcast, we fill out this birth certificate for ourselves, or for our babies, but we also essentially fill out one for ourselves. I'm naming my baby, and it's taking me so many years and thoughts, but we also become mom or mother. And I think a lot of times it's easy for that name mother to replace what our original name is. So I remember that in the NICU, that no one called me Valerie. It was mom, do this, mom, do this. It's overnight, my name changed. And mom or mother, it's a beautiful name, but also there's so much more to me. And society has all these expectations of moms, and we ourselves have these expectations. Like I thought I was going to be this perfect mom. And I quickly realized that I'm not. And I know throughout the first couple of years, we had like some medical procedures that we went through, and that illusion of control just time and time again. I think it was just that calling of there is a reason why I am like, I hate that we had those experiences, but I'm glad that I experienced them so I can be passionate and help others know that it's okay not to be perfect. Like we are imperfect people, imperfect moms. And in fact, when you look up like mother in the dictionary, there's a noun, that title mother, as well as the verb, which I thought was interesting that mother is a verb. I never thought about it in that way. And when, Merriam-Webster says mother as a verb means to give birth or to give rise, as well as to care for or protect. And when you think about that, like what does all of those things? And it really is love, or at least that's what I feel like, or I believe it is. Love gives birth, allows our families and ourselves to rise, allows us to care and protect. And all I really have control over at the end of the day is loving in the moment and living in that present moment, because there is going to be chaotic environments. Like, for me, like my baby was taken to the NICU, like, or I don't know, we're running late for school, or, or whatever that is, like from like these crazy, like really stressful experiences, just the mundane stressful experiences. And we're not going to be perfect, but recognizing that and saying, okay, how do I do that? How do I do the next moment in the name of love? And with my neurology background, like I think about it is like creating new pathways in your brain. So like we have mental highways and mental back roads. And I tend to have mental highways of frustration, anxiety. And, if we're running late, I'm like, okay, we need to get in the car. I'm yelling and blah, blah, blah. But if I take a step back and say, okay, instead of reacting to whatever this is, that my fear center is essentially like making up in my brain of all these worst case scenarios of what's going to happen if we're late. If I take a step back and say, it's going to be okay. Like my fear center is essentially just giving me a false alarm. Like it's going to be okay if we're late. And really in the present moment right now, this is a beautiful moment. I mean, it's a chaotic moment, but it's still how my kids want to play with me. They want to be with me. They want to play with cars. They want to, sing songs, and just to embrace that. I mean, obviously we still need to get places and do those things, but just kind of taking a step back and just experiencing the moment for what it is. Because it really is a beautiful, beautiful, fleeting moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody told me one time, and this really kind of hit home for me, because I was like, I don't know, like as soon as baby number 3 came, like everything overwhelmed me.
Yeah.
And so it was just constant, like overwhelming. And I really felt like, I don't know, like it was just hard to do anything. And it was so frustrating to me. And then somebody was like, this is temporary. It's just temporary. Like, it's not going to be like this forever. And like, that was something that I really like held on to. Like, and I think it was even my husband who said it. He's like, this is just temporary, babe. We can get through this. And so in my really stressful moments, I just have to step back and like remind myself, like, okay, I'm frustrated right now for whatever reason. Like I can't go for a run because all my 3 kids are home, or I can't, like get the dishes done. But it's like, in a couple of years, like I'll probably be able to do all those things again. So just be in the moment, which is hard though.
It's so hard. And that's what I feel like it's like a daily, sometimes hourly struggle to do that. And some days are better than others. I mean, like I know this weekend, I was in my head, like I was annoyed, frustrated, like that I wasn't able to do anything. And I think, 2 things of like, just kind of recognizing it. And again, that's that steps of change that we teach our patients with like, education and stuff, of being aware of our feelings. And it's okay to have those feelings. Like, it's okay for me to like, be frustrated, but just saying, okay, that's a highway, having that self-compassion of that's a highway in my brain that I tend to have, but be, allowing that imperfection, because life is not perfect. And then being like, well, maybe I can just, reset. Maybe like, I know this weekend my husband was here, so I had the opportunity to take like a few minutes just to kind of rest my eyes and lay down, which I know sometimes we can't do, but whatever that is, like maybe stepping outside in nature for a second, just whatever works for you to kind of do that reset. And it took a few hours, to be honest, for my brain to kind of get back into, okay, like I don't want to be in my head all day. So I was like, well, I don't really want to right now, but let's just make gingerbread cookies. It was Sunday night and I didn't really want to, but I was like, oh, that may be fun. And I turned my phone off and we just did that. And I had a really nice time. But not every day we can make cookies. It was just kind of like, I'm going to embrace the moment for what it is, instead of because I'm essentially taking time being frustrated. So,
Right.
I don't have time to be frustrated either. So I'm either going to bake cookies with this time, or I'm going to sit and be annoyed right now. So what path am I going to choose? And sometimes I may take that, I'm going to, sit and just take that time to myself. But all of it is just saying it's okay. Life is not perfect. And I think just kind of throwing perfection as well as failure, those two words out of the English language. I just don't like them, because if you look at the world and you look at nature, I mean, it's like the wintertime up here now in Illinois, and you see all of this, it's cold, the sunlight's, the days are short, and it's definitely not perfect compared to the summertime and it being warm. But in the fall, for example, decreased sunlight, that produces those beautiful colors. I mean, and those beautiful colors in the leaves are what's inside. So sometimes it's these moments where we're just frustrated and we don't know what to do, and our lives are not what they used to be. Just embracing that and giving yourself compassion.
Yeah. Yes. Self-compassion, I think, is a big one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think my hardest time of day is trying to come home from work. You've been, and then you're tired from work, and then you got to cook dinner, and you have a million distractions while you're trying to cook dinner.
Yes. Yes. I absolutely, I am in such a dinner cooking rut too. I mean, the gingerbread cookies were really a big deal for me, because I never do anything in the kitchen, I feel but yeah. And I think for me, giving myself grace with that, or at least there's a lot of times we have, I don't know, dino nuggets and fruit and veggie pouches, those little fruit and veggie pouches. I don't even know if they're good, but I'm well, they're kind of getting vegetables that way,
But simplify it.
Yes. I mean, and it's just but then I think about it. I'm oh, I can do whatever that is a different day. I'm just enjoying time or relaxing or doing what I can. I think really, I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer for it's okay not to be perfect. I mean, really, life is, it can be more simple than we, I think, so many times make it harder than it has to be.
Yeah.
Me included.
How have you learned to balance your work life, situations?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'm in a unique position right now. After the NICU experience, I really had a different view on healthcare, to be honest. I was very passionate about advocating for patients and families and decreasing medical bullying. We experienced a lot of that. And I think that through all those experiences, I kind of decided to do non-traditional nursing at that point. I'm I don't know what I want to do with healthcare, but life is short. And we were fortunate to have the opportunity for me to kind of take a step back, and just do more teaching and I started writing. Writing was very therapeutic for me, especially with the experiences that we were having of just writing out my thoughts. And so a couple years ago, I decided I'm going to write a book on everything that I have learned and I'm still learning. Because again, I think we're all in this together in the community. So I want my book to essentially be this community of, we're all navigating life together as moms and doing the best we can and helping subsequent generations and kind of empowering us to have that power, because we are more powerful than we think.
The name of your book? Because I saw you're an author.
So it's not published yet, but it's called To Mom Is to Love. And so I'm going to be over the next year. I mean, again, like just with 3 kids, it's hard to, to do anything, I feel like, but over the next year, it'll be coming out. So so a lot of my podcast and all of that is essentially like just, I talk about stuff that I write about, and I like to interview guests that talk about just real things, because life is messy and we talk about that.
Yes.
But in answer to your question, so I would say I'm busy in different ways now. Like I'm not necessarily going to work all the time in the traditional nursing sense, but I am obsessing sometimes about my writing or what I need to do. And like, I guess just the to-do list. We always have a to-do list, and I can easily let my to-do list kind of take over my life. But I think what has helped me is to, on my to-do list, like be intentional about it and say time to myself. Like when I was training for a half marathon last year, I would literally put like, okay, here's how many miles I'm going to do, or, or maybe like, I don't know, just watching a movie with your kids or something, like, or going for a walk, putting that on your to-do list. And for me, being like a type A person, I like to cross off things. It gives like a great,
it's a wonderful feeling.
Yes. Yes. So having that like reward of that crossing off, and like, so then it becomes kind of that a habit. But I mean, I remember those busy days when I was, practicing all the time, burning myself out, like where you need it's so much easier said than done, but you can't pour from an empty cup. And I think that was so hard for me. Like I remember like just being so stressed, and like, actually, for me, I kind of developed a lot of OCD type feelings and anxiety because I was just so stressed out when I was working. And that's also part of why I knew I needed to take a step back from the traditional nursing role, because it was just, I was taking work home with me mentally.
Yes.
And it was just, and I'm glad that the mental health and awareness is now more out there, because I didn't realize the resources I had. I thought I was in my head so much, and I thought I was the only one that like...
That's okay. No, that's why like I wanted to have these conversations and really create the Healthy Nurse Connection, because I have a very similar story. Like once my children were born, I had a very hard time with that work-life balance, and I couldn't leave it at the hospital all the time. It can't, like, because I gave all of myself to the hospital. By the time I came home, if my son wasn't feeling well or my husband, I had nothing left to give them. And that was when, so I kind of want to circle back just to say that like, this is an experience that a lot of nurses feel. So when you talk about like a non-traditional nursing role, like what exactly was that for you?
So this was over the scope of a couple of years. So this was when I was still in Dallas. I took a step back from, I was in, I'm trying to remember how many hours I was working, but it was like one of those like retail health clinics. And I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. So what else can I do? And so I found it was like a patient education, primary care, virtual wellness checks. So that's what I did that, but part-time. I remember it was only like 2 or 3 days a week. I started with that, and then teaching adjunct faculty, or like being like an adjunct faculty. I did that. And I am fortunate that I know, so for like nurse practitioners, there's 2 certifying boards. I'm with ANCC. I don't necessarily need practice hours. So I like really looked into and that so varies on states, on your certification, so many things. But I wanted to know like, how can I keep up my license, but still do things that can fill my cup up now. So I encourage, like, if you're feeling burnt out, like, I don't know, like with the state of Texas, you do have to have practice hours. This is all like more nurse practitioner stuff, but I did volunteer clinics, and I actually really enjoyed doing that, because I was filling my cup up, but I also felt like I was helping other people, and everyone there wanted to be there. And it was a very like just nice environment. And I was getting those practice hours in. But really, after that, though, I mean, we were fortunate that I was able to kind of take a step back once we started having more kids and saying, okay, I really just want, my husband was very supportive of this writing. And so I think writing now is very much, the writing and the podcasting is like my non-traditional nursing now. Like that's what I'm doing. And I mean, I don't know eventually if I will go back, but I really want to empower moms, but also nurses, healthcare workers, in that we are doing so much for ourselves, for our patients, for our families, but we have to fill our cup up first. It's like, I mean, I know it's so overused, but that oxygen mask saying of like, just putting that mask on first, because our kids, they want us to also be doing things for ourselves. Like they don't want a perfect mom. They want you. They want their mom. They don't want a perfect mom. And
Right.
so whatever that is. I mean, I think that, and that's different for everyone. And I know a lot of us like have an identity with nursing. And if that's part of your identity, that's great. Like
I think I want to highlight too, that like, yes, I strongly identify with like being a nurse, and that is like part of who I am.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not practicing bedside right now either. I am also in like a non-traditional nursing role. Like I'm an instructor at a community college. I have a blog as well that I write. And so I've kind of gone into that writing realm as well. But I think it's important to tell nurses that like your degree is versatile. Like you don't have to just be at the bedside. There are so many other things out there. And we actually don't even get to utilize all of our skills and like what we were like trained to do at the bedside, because we're constrained to what has to be done. Like it's like the ultimate to-do list at the bedside, that we don't actually get to practice what being a nurse truly is. So, and
that's such a good point.
Yeah. And like, I felt like a huge amount of guilt when I stepped away from the bedside, and I still have this every once in a while, but like, why? I still haven't come to this conclusion of like, why am I like, I am still out there, like helping in my community and doing things. Like I don't necessarily have to be at the bedside. So like, even if you feel like guilty about it, like, I think that's just part of being a nurse. Also, we're just like selfless and think that we have to suffer to like to give back. But I think it's important to say that like we really don't have to. And if you're in a work environment that is not helping your life or mental life, your mental health, then you can look for other ways. There's other avenues out there. And you can still be a quote unquote nurse and do that.
Yes, you're still an amazing nurse, whatever you're doing. I love that it's just, a nurse is, gosh, I am so thankful to be a nurse, because I know, like, for example, like when I was in the NICU, those nurses were what kept me going. Like I am so thankful for that. And I think sometimes we downplay our role as, oh, I'm just a nurse, or, but like, it's not just like, that is an amazing, like, you're doing a great job. I'm so proud of all of you, of all the nurses out there. Like we are just amazing. Like we're doing amazing work. And so whatever that is, I mean, I think that it brings me, I feel like over the past, 6 or 7 years now, I'm more on the patient side, to be honest, than on when I'm in a hospital, than on the provider side. So I see things that I wouldn't have noticed before. And I have some PTSD from the NICU, and I will travel back in time, like in my head, when I go. I remember one time I was in the emergency department, and I immediately I was not in the present. Like I was terrified, in that fight or flight. Like I wanted to get the heck out of that hospital, and I wanted to protect my child the only way I knew how, which was leaving. And I remember the nurse, she hugged me, and that's really the only thing I remember other than that. Like it just that grounding of, just that hug, that made all the difference. And so it just, we're doing beautiful work, but just trying to remember that. I mean, and it wasn't the charting, it wasn't the to-dos. And I was on the patient side, and all I needed was a hug. And,
Right. Yeah. Well, it's wonderful. I love that story.
Yeah.
So when is your book coming out?
So it'll be sometime, I don't have the exact date, but it'll be sometime next year, like later on in the year. I have an email subscriber list that can, if you don't mind me telling your listeners. Yeah. I mean, if you want to join my email subscriber list, I don't spam you, I promise. I only emails like once or twice a month on updates on just mom stuff. And so I will update you on when the book will be coming out and any local events. I'm starting some local events, as well as hoping to do some virtual events. So my first local event will be in February. We're going to have like a mom's night out, and I'm going to talk a little bit, but also just enjoying our company, like filling our cup up. So I hope that really, I just want moms to know that they're important and that we're doing such powerful work, and nurses as well. Like, you're doing such powerful work, and it's these little things like that hug that makes all the difference.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And your podcast name, is it To Mom Is to Love also?
Yes, I think the icon says just To Mom on there. I need to fix the icon, but it's To Mom Is to Love with Valerie Probstfeld, NP. It's available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and I interview a bunch of guests on all sorts of topics, but real topics. So I want to just make sure that our goal is to empower moms, but to know resources available. Like with this, when I was experiencing those OCD thoughts, I had no idea there's Postpartum International, there's all sorts of things out there that make you know that you're not alone. And that's the biggest thing. We are not alone.
That's wonderful. Well, we will post all your information in the show notes as well. So if you guys want to go back and look up Valerie and sign up for her newsletter, you'll be able to do that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm glad that we finally got the time to sit and chat.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, we'll have to have you back once your book is out and everything. So you have to keep me up to date as well. And then we can talk about that.
I would love that. Thank you.